Hello, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another episode of the One Report. This is episode 3. Little bit of a kind of update, I suppose, on this episode. There wasn't a ton of news from One Championship over the past week, and so I've decided to put the Big Friday Fights 81 card in this episode. Usually I would do this as a separate preview on this channel rather than putting it in. It was never the intention to start putting those previews into these episodes. But let me know what you guys think. I'll do it this way this time around. But if you would rather I have the preview separate or have it as part of this kind of more long form style thing, kind of a podcast, but not a podcast, if that makes sense. I watch a lot of stuff like that. So hopefully you guys get what I mean. And yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Like I said, let me know if you guys want me to keep that separate from now on, and I will do that. We'll just we'll trial it, I suppose. Hope everybody had a good weekend. It was a busy weekend for combat sports, it feels like, despite the fact that there was no UFC. I mean, I was sat there on Saturday night with about 3 different streaming platforms going, and even then I didn't get to watch Glory 95. I'm going to get back, catch back up with that at some point this week, but there was just too much in terms of European MMA and Anthony Joshua versus Dubois, which obviously I'm sure you guys will know was a crazy fight. And yeah, I had a busy week, a good week. I went to go and see The Substance. If you know anything about me, I'm a huge horror fan. I would highly recommend, if you're a big horror fan, go and see The Substance. That is one of my favorite movies I've seen this year. And yeah, it's fantastic. But anyway, we are not here to talk about body horror. We are here to talk about One Championship. I have no idea what the other video is going to be on this channel this week. As you guys know, I've been trying to maybe switch it up a little bit, been doing some other MMA stuff on this channel. I don't know. I'll have to have a think. Yeah, nothing springing to mind as of yet. I suppose I don't know. We'll work it out. But either way, I mean, let me know if there's something you guys want to see me do on this channel. Any MMA topics that I should cover, or maybe we'll just wait and see what news drops throughout the rest of the week. I think we'll probably do that. But yeah, let's dive into the topics. There are a few kind of newsworthy things to get to before we get to the Friday Fights card. So I'll spend 10 minutes or so going over these, and then we'll dive into the Friday Fights card because there's a fair bit to get to on that card. And we will start with the former atomweight title challenger, Ham Seo-hee. Let's just pull this up on screen, actually. There you go. So Ham Seo-hee has been speaking about the upcoming, well, it was supposed to be, so all right, let's rewind this a little bit. One Fight Night 25 obviously is the next big fight night event that we have. That is October 4th at Lumpini, Region Ursel versus Alexei Nicholas 2. And we were originally supposed to get another title fight on there. It was co-main event, interim atomweight title, Denise Zamboanga versus Rasahina. It might be Rasahina. I apologize. Pronunciation, you got to go with me. If you've watched any of the videos on this channel before, I try my best with pronunciation, but it's hard, so bear with me. And I mean, me and Nick Atkin kind of reacted to this news at the time that it was made official on the One on SK podcast. The fight has since been cancelled, I believe. I'm not entirely sure why, but yeah, it's no longer set to take place on October 4th. But Ham Seo-hee has posted a statement about it. I feel like this is she writes about having received news about Denise versus Aliana for the interim world title. I guess that would be news of it being rebooked rather than the initial booking. If that's the case, this statement seems to be a little bit too late because that fight was announced like weeks ago at this point. I really need a haircut, by the way. That's why it is a cold and dark Monday morning, and yet I am wearing a hat. The weather is absolutely horrible right now in the UK. I'm sure if you watched some of the boxing or some of the Premier League football over the weekend, then you would have seen that, even if you don't live in the UK. Yeah, it's not brilliant right now, but either way, yeah. So basically saying that she deserves to be in an interim title fight, and I'm kind of regurgitating what me and Nick said when we reacted to this fight news at the time. So if you check that out, I'm sorry you have to hear it again, but basically that I think Ham has a good point. I can see both sides. On one hand, Rasahina should not be fighting for an interim title based on her recent activity and results. Denise definitely should. She has to be in there. She was obviously supposed to fight Stamp at 1167. It only makes sense that she would be, and she took a fight anyway on that card against Noel Grandjean and got the win. So I definitely think either she has to be next for Stamp or she has to be fighting in an interim title fight. Those are the only fights that should be being offered to her at this point. But don't get me wrong, there's not like a whole list of atomweight contenders that you should put into this fight. Chihiro Sawada is the one that springs to mind most for me, but with Ham, I get it in the sense that if she is to win the interim title, if she beats Denise, she's already beaten Denise twice. Is that right? She beat her twice, right? Yeah, she did. That's a hard fight to sell, her and Stamp again. I think the first fight wasn't close, and Stamp got the finish, and that was, not that long ago. Obviously, it was One Fight Night 14 in September last year, so I get it from that perspective. Maybe you don't want to put Ham Seo-hee straight into a interim title fight off of a loss to the current champion, but at the same time, is there a better way for her to get, like, in terms of if Ham Seo-hee is going to go get a win that would then put her back, that would then, like, kind of re-cement her as the top contender, beating Denise is probably the win that would do it, you would imagine. So does that then kind of vindicate running her and Stamp back? I guess it kind of does. But like I said, I can see both sides, but I don't think, whilst I can understand that you might not want to do Ham Seo-hee and Stamp again right now, off of Ham Seo-hee potentially going and beating Denise, and then that's it, you get the fight again. You can't make that argument when one half of the interim title fight, Rasahina, should not be in that fight. No disrespect to her or her ability as a fighter, but it's just, this is an interim title fight. You should have, two of the top contenders in the division, two people that are on good form, preferably. And you can't really make that case. So it's a little bit weird. I don't know why this statement has come out now. I don't know if there was, maybe she wanted to release it a lot earlier. Like I said, maybe this is in regards to it being rebooked. I don't know. Ham Seo-hee says both are fighters who lost to me. She beat Aliona outside of one, as she says there in the statement. I thought it did make sense for them to fight for the interim belt when I'm ready and waiting. I've been waiting for an offer for a long time. As long as I have enough time to train, I will accept any offer and fight against anyone. I believe that one championship will make the fair/right decision. So we will see, I guess, what happens with this, and whether they do go ahead with the original planned fight. I think Chihiro Sawada has to be in this conversation. So if it was me, I think her versus Denise makes the most sense. But I think likely the best option is probably Denise versus Ham Seo-hee again. And like I said, if Ham goes on to win that and you're in a position where you have to do Ham and Stamp again, she just beat Denise, who was on a good run, but then also she's already beaten Denise twice before. So is it that impressive? I don't know. It's a tough one. But there you go. Ham Seo-hee is speaking out about it. We also had a few fights announced for One Fight Night 25. That is the card that obviously Denise versus Rasahina was supposed to happen at, which is no longer happening. This is the fight card we've got so far. They haven't added these fights to the website yet, but we do also have on this card Minowa and Uzbek. That was supposed to happen in Denver at 1168. That has been rebooked for this card. I believe it was some like visa or travel issues with Uzbek, who clearly won championship are pretty high on. I believe we spoke about that fight at the time it was announced, or in the preview or something. Yeah, it must have been in the preview. I believe it was on the fight card graphic that they released like weeks before the card. So we have that on this card as well, which is a fairly interesting strawweight fight. And you have Johan Estupinan, who did fight on 1168 in that crazy card opener against Mark Climaco. That was unbelievable. I keep forgetting, was it Mark Climaco or Sean Climaco? The problem is I interviewed one of the brothers right after that fight. I'm gonna look this up so I don't get this wrong, because I struggle to remember. I get their names mixed up, you know? It happens. Let's look this up before so that I know for sure. It was Sean Clamaco. Did I say that or did I say Mark? I think I said Mark. Either way, right? Crazy, crazy fight. It was so much fun, and we're gonna get Estupinan back already. He's going to be taking on Zachariah Al Jamari, which I think is a nice little step for Johan to take. What's Al Jamari's record right now? Um, I feel like he's had some like reasonably noteworthy fights this year, hasn't he? Yeah, of course. He got stopped by Alif last time out at one fight night 24, which is in August, which is quite a quick turnaround, considering it was a first round knockout loss. Yeah, Alif looked absolutely incredible in that fight. Um, so yeah, I think that I think it makes sense. Even if that turnaround is pretty quick for Aljamari, and for Estupinan. He got dropped a couple of times in that fight against Climaco, and it was a bit of a war for was it 2 rounds that it lasted? So yeah, I think those are quite good additions for this card. And as we'll look out here, like very quickly, I think this card looks very, very strong. I'm excited for this main event between Alexis. Is it Alexis or Alexi? I always say Alexi, but I think it might just be Alexis versus Regian. I think that fight is great. I'm super excited for that. Contorni versus Takir Kalilov is a really, really fun fight as well. Bokan versus Mansour is very good. Big fight for that strawweight division, actually. I think if Mansour can get a win there, you're probably looking at him maybe fighting the winner of Passio and Brooks. I know that obviously him and Passio already fought. Passio beat him, but Sintimut back in action, taking on Yusuf Asuik. Asik. I mean, come on, man. There's a lot of vowels in that name, all right? You've got to give me some slack there. Ayaka Miura versus Gian Rajuan is, not bad. Tong Poon versus Rui Patello is quite fun. Daniel Williams back in action, always a big fan of him. And Amy Purney back after that incredible knockout over Yu Yao Pui. I'm going to hopefully be speaking to Amy in the coming days also. So I will post a thing on this channel about it if I do end up doing that. I have some fun one championship stuff actually that I've already done that will not be going up on this channel. It'll be going up on one of the places that I work for. But yeah, as and when that gets kind of put out there, I will let people know so they can go and check that out. But yeah, it was a fun thing to do, and I put a lot of time into it. So I would appreciate people for keeping an eye out for that. And yeah, regardless, I'm rambling. I think that's about it, right? We had the thing that Liam Harrison confirmed about him and Haggerty squashing their beef at 1168. I thought that was a nice kind of thing. I didn't know that had happened at the event, so I was happy to hear about that. That's a cool moment between them. But yeah, I think that's about it for the news. Like I said, there wasn't much, and we spent about 10 minutes on it, so I think that works out pretty well. I'm just trying to see if the connection has just like dropped off the face of the earth. I apologize if the quality has gone a bit shaky there. The Wi-Fi signal just went a bit, like when your Wi-Fi is fine, and then every now and then it just goes. I think I'm just gonna dip for like a minute. Yeah, mine does that. Anyway, let's talk about one fight night 81, shall we? Not fight night, Friday fights. Jesus, it's a Monday morning. Who decided to do this on a Monday morning? I did. I'm completely blocking half of the poster here, so it looks like your main event is Leftway's Tant Zin versus Joe Now. But of course, there are more fighters hidden below just there. They've updated. If I'm sure a lot of you guys know that I use StreamYard to do this stuff, and yeah, they've updated it. So now I have this lovely curved border window. Let me know what you guys think, or don't. I know you guys probably don't care about stuff like that. It bothers me, but probably nobody else. But either way, one Friday Fight 81. I think this card looks fantastic. I'm super excited for this one. Is it better if I pull it up on Instagram? Let's have a look. Let's pull up the card graphic on here. I have not searched one championship in some time, apparently, even though I most definitely have. They haven't pinned it yet. Okay, well, in that case, we will just use the website for now. But there might be some changes here and there, so I apologize if there is. If I can quickly find the fight card graphic, then I will just pull this up on screen and we will do that instead. But they posted it. Or did they even post it? I know that it got shared online, but because we spoke about it last episode, I think, with the bout order, like this card that you're seeing here, is not like the actual running order. Like if you've seen the fight card graphic we spoke about last week, as I said, Takeru and Hiroki Yakamoto's fights are way earlier on in the card, so that it's a better time, so that it's a better time for the Japanese fans because of the time difference and stuff. So it makes sense. But yeah, there was a little bit of like crazy reaction to that, but yeah, it makes sense. But either way, I think this card is fantastic. I did a news video about this card when it got announced, just to talk about a couple of the fights that have been added. And I'd said, is this the best Friday Fights card that we've had so far? And whilst, of course, we've had some ones in the past where they've got like 3 title fights and stuff like that. So maybe not in terms of the top level draws, and we'll talk about the main event and stuff like that a little bit later. But and people have had their complaints about some of the other fights on this card. I'm looking at Takeru's fight in particular there, but I think the quality from top to bottom in terms of like there being constantly fun fights is really really good. I mean, like I've just scrolled down to the bottom to look at the bottom 3 fights, and we have Nabil Anan right there. Like that, I mean, I love Nabil. I love watching him. He's been on an absolute tear as of late. Of course, lost his one debut to Superlek, and since then has won 4 fights in a row, I believe it is, stopping the likes of Kulab Dam and the Krob. Obviously, beating Felipe Lobo last time out, which by far his biggest win to date. And he kind of made it look easy, if we're being honest. I don't know why the decision was to then put him in here against Solin O, I assume is how you say that, in a bantamweight Muay Thai clash when Nabil is top 5 ranked in this division. Like, uh, I get that he would probably need to stay busy because Superlek just won this belt against Haggerty. You've probably got Nico Carrillo up next. Nabil's probably going to have to wait a little while before he gets like a top 5 matchup, you would imagine. But I'm not sure why this would be the call. But I'm excited to watch Nabil, and hopefully he can maintain this incredible run that he is on. Next up, you've got Sua Kim taking on Otis Waghorn. Otis Waghorn, of course, stopped Conklai on his debut, and clearly a fighter that won a pretty high on. I probably should have reached out to him and tried to speak to him. Maybe if he gets his hand raised, I'll reach out to him in the near future and speak to him and get him on the channel. Not this channel. Sorry, that's confusing. I will hopefully interview him at some point, because clearly a guy that have got a lot of high hopes for, when you look at the positions that he's been, like the fights he's been getting. Sua Kim, I mean, take one look at his record, and he's got 4 fights in one championship. 2 times he's knocked someone out, and 2 times he's been knocked out. So it should be a fun fight, and an interesting test for Otis to see where he's at right now, in terms of the kind of pecking order, of well, this is a catch weight, but you know what I mean, in and around these weight classes. Then you've got Shadow taking on Mohamed CS Arani. This fight is fantastic. I think you've got Shadow coming off of back-to-back wins, obviously still some kind of a little bit of a feeling out process for him in one championship. Can he adapt his style? But a win over Jimmy Venot last time out, and Eric here before that as well. Did lose his debut, which was pretty shocking at the time. But we'll see how it works out for him. And I think Mohamed CS Arani is this could be a huge moment for him. Not that he's like waiting for this breakout moment. Like it's been a little while since we saw him, but his last fight he beat Saechai, so it's not like him going out there and beating Shadow would be like whoa. But I think it might be kind of that. He beats Saechai, and you're like, okay, we got to take notice of this guy. Like this guy's real good. And then if he's able to go out there and beat Shadow, it's like it's a reminder. It's like, okay, we really, really need to keep tabs on this guy because look at what he's doing. So I think that fight is fantastic as well. I'm really, really excited for that one. Sewer Black versus Kulab Dam should be. I mean, how long ago was Kulab Dam stopped by Nabil? That was in July. Okay, so that was quite a while ago. Coming off of back-to-back losses, that knockout loss to Nabil, and then a decision loss to Nong-O. Sewer Black lost to Cameron Nabati last time out. More on him a little bit later, but before that was on a hell of a run. How many fights is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-fight win streak. He, of course, beat back-to-back Irish fighters in Craig Coakley and Stefan Karodi, but beat Vladimir Kuzmin, which I thought was very, very impressive, and then lost to Nabati. But yeah, another really, really good fight. Like I just think that this card is, in terms of like, I don't know if this is going to be. I'm sure it'll be pay-per-view for some people. I don't know. These Friday Fights cards kind of confuse me in the UK because it always lists them as being pay-per-view, and then some. I think usually they're just free on YouTube for people in the UK or on one's website. It's a bit confusing in the UK, but either way, if this was pay-per-view, I think that whilst it may not have the kind of pay-per-view draws of some of the previous pay-per-view Friday Fights cards, in terms of a card that you can stick on from the very start and just have a great time, there's so many fun fights on this card. We have Sam A versus Akram Hamidi. Yeah, I want to see that. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's been a little while since we saw like the old Sam Hay, which is fair enough. He's 40 years old. I'm not expecting him to kind of go on this great Indian summer tour and turn back the clocks. But we will see how he's able to do against Hamidi, who did win his last fight back in June. Then we have the big 4 fights on this card that you can see them all here. I'm kind of cutting off Superbond's name and Joe Natwood's name, but otherwise I'd be cutting off Nong-O and Cameron Nabati. So top 4 fights on this card. Nong-O versus Cameron Nabati. This is super interesting. Nabati has obviously won all of his fights in one championship, 3 in a row now over Pongsiri, Avatar, and Sewer Black. In Nong-O, he faces an interesting challenge because we saw a different Nong-O against Kulab Dam, who fought a lot more reserved, a lot smarter, a lot more tactical. And I think that he can make the fight competitive doing that against Nabati using his experience, right? If he goes out there and is too aggressive, like he was in some of his losses, to Haggerty and Carrillo, and also some of his title defenses, even where he was just trying to blitz people. I don't think that is going to end too well for Nong-O. This is a scary fight for him, but I think that it could be really interesting if he's able to do a similar kind of thing that he did to Kulab Dam and just kind of, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm expecting this to be a tougher fight than the Kulab Dam fight was, like even just on paper, right? I'm trying to take sips of my iced coffee because I'm struggling today. The voice is not quite there. So I apologize. But yeah, a really interesting fight for this this bantamweight Muay Thai division. If Cameron Nabati wins this fight, then you are talking, the very, very top of this division next for him. And if Nong-O wins, then he'll have back-to-back wins, and we're potentially talking about Nong-O back in the mix. So a very, very interesting fight here. Also in the bantamweight division, bantamweight kickboxing, former champion Hiroki Yakamoto welcomes back Elias Enahachi to one championship. Elias being the former flyweight kickboxing champion. He, of course, defeated Superlek for that title, which is a win that has aged beautifully. Obviously, it was, I say that, it was a huge win at the time, but it's aged even better. And yeah, he fought on Friday Fights. It was like Friday Fight 6, I want to say, but still ages, since he last fought in one championship. Hiroki returned earlier this year and lost that controversial decision to Wei Ray, one fight night 22. Interesting to see how Enahachi does at bantamweight, because I know that was a big reason why he didn't fight for a long time, is because he was like, I can't make flyweight anymore. So maybe we see a rejuvenated Enahachi here at bantamweight. I don't know. We'll find out. And with Hiroki, it's like I expected him to come back and really work his way back towards this title, and obviously it didn't happen because of Wei Ray. And you're looking at the winner of this fight probably going on to fight Haggerty unless they put Wei Ray in that mix. But I don't think. I think Chadri said that he thought Hiroki won that fight, so it seems unlikely that they're gonna give Wei Ray a title fight off the back of that. But I think the winner of this will probably be more deserving just because of the fact that both men have held titles in one championship before. It adds a lot of pedigree to this fight. And I'm happy to have Enahachi back, and I'm happy to have Akimoto active. So I'm very excited for this one. I think this might be just... I'm excited for the main event. I think the main event is going to be fantastic. But in terms of there's a little bit of like strangeness going on in that main event that we'll get to. Whereas Enahachi versus Akimoto is just like simple. Two former champs. You've got the narrative of Enahachi coming in bantamweight. You've got the narrative of Akimoto came back and didn't win on his return. So there's some really interesting narratives in this fight, and it's right up there for me as the ones I am most excited to see. Like I said, I think the main event will deliver, like it'll be a banger. But in terms of the stakes and everything, there are stakes in the main event, but they're a little bit confusing. But hey, like I said, we'll get to that, because before that, we've got Takeru Sagawa. Well, like I said, bout order's out of place, but Takeru Sagawa taking on... I hate saying this guy's name because I always feel like I'm butchering it. Tant Zin. You let me know if I am butchering that. He's a left-way fighter. That is kind of all we know. I say all we know. That is kind of when this fight was announced. It was like Takeru's new opponent is a left-way guy. There you go. He of course was supposed to fight Black Panther, which is a fight that I spoke about at the time. But yeah, it got some criticism for maybe not being, the best matchup. I don't think... It didn't bother me too much at the time because I never expected this to be, Takeru versus, I don't know, pick a name out, right? But this was always, I think, going to be a bit of a placeholder fight, keep Takeru busy, and hopefully we can do that Rodtang fight maybe early next year or something like that. It's going to be strange watching Takeru fight at Lumpini Stadium. Interested to know what the plan was behind that, what the thinking was behind that. I think that potentially there's the pay-per-view being a big factor here. That's why you would put Takeru on this card rather than having him on like a fight night card or something like that. You would want him on a numbered card or a Friday Fights pay-per-view. So yeah, it's interesting, and we'll see how it goes. And I'm excited to watch Takeru because the guy is a lot of fun to watch. That fight with Superlek at the start of the year is one of my favorite fights of the year. That was an absolute banger, and in search of his first win. So I'm excited to see him back. As I said multiple times when this fight was announced, I would rather he's being given fights and being kept active, because the alternative is Takeru has a high purse. We want him to fight in Japan so he can sell a lot of tickets. We are not going back to Japan this year, so he will have to wait until next year. I'd rather he gets given fights, even if there are some kind of like, oh, why would you do that when you could do this? Takeru's getting to fight, and I'm sure, he would rather fight than not fight. So I am not mad at it. Finally, in the main event, we've only gone half an hour. I feel like I've done so much talking. I need to slow it down, maybe. I don't know. Main event: Smoking Joe Natwa versus Superbon for the featherweight. It's not for anything. It's just featherweight Muay Thai. I do apologize. Of course, Superbon is the interim featherweight kickboxing world champion, but he's going to be crossing back over into Muay Thai for this fight. He, of course, challenged Tawan Chai for this title or for the featherweight Muay Thai title in December last year. One Friday Fights 46, I want to say. A really good fight, but Taranchai, I felt pretty comfortably got the win, but it was a very fun fight whilst it lasted. And then you've got Joe Natwood, who has been the distance with Taranchai on two occasions now, once in kickboxing, once in Muay Thai, and both were very, very close. A lot of arguments for Smoking Joe winning those fights. Both of them, in fact, the kickboxing encounter last year, and then also their Muay Thai title fight at 167. So then we have the news that is going to be fighting Tawanchai for a third time at 1169 in Atlanta on November 8th. I think that makes a lot of sense. I was happy for that fight. Happy to see that go down in Atlanta as well. I thought that was a good spot for it. And then we get this fight announced, and it's like, I've spoken about this already, so I'm not going to go into it too much. You can literally check out the video on this channel of me giving my reaction to this fight being announced. But part of it is, well, what if Joe Natwood loses? Because Superbon is one of the best strikers on the planet. And also, what if Joe Natwood wins but is too injured to fight in Atlanta? I think the probable solution to that is that surely Superbon has been told that if he goes out there and wins, then he is replacing Joe Natwood in Atlanta. But then why risk, what is a pretty highly anticipated trilogy fight, considering how many people, like for me, I didn't think it was as controversial as a lot of people did. I wasn't particularly in a rush to see the trilogy fight between Tawanchai and Joe. I thought that Tawanchai did beat him in the rematch, even if the first fight was very, very close. I don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the rematch wasn't close. It still was, but I did think Tawanchai won. I wasn't crying robbery about that one. So why jeopardize the trilogy though when the fans have been so outspoken about thinking that Joe Natwood should have won those fights? Like I just feel like that's the fight to do. And I say making. I don't know if Joe Natwood pushed for this fight. I don't know what the case is, so I don't want to make the claim that Joe Natwood didn't want this fight. Maybe he did. But to have him fight Superbon before what is the biggest fight of his life in Atlanta is strange, let's say. Because even if you get a scenario where Superbon ends up coming through this fight and you go, okay, we'll just change the plans. We'll do Superbon versus Tawanchai 2 in Atlanta. Obviously, that's a huge fight because the first fight was a really fun one to watch. Superbon is a name that I think, whilst, he's not going to, sell out the State Farm Arena on his own, he is a name that striking fans who are potentially looking at going to this event will be like, oh man, I get to watch Superbon and he's going to fight Tawanchai. And the first fight was great. Awesome. That's a great fight, that rematch. But I can't imagine a world in which Superbon comes through this fight unscathed, even if he's able to beat Joe Natwood, you'd imagine he's going to take some damage. He's going to take some wear and tear. And then he's got to make the turnaround in just over a month to go and challenge Tawanchai over 5 rounds. It just seems, I can understand doing this fight if it was like a month ago, but it just seems too close for me. But as I say all of that, the most important thing in terms of being a fan, first and foremost, is that this fight will be a fantastic watch. I am really interested to see how this one goes because we saw in Superbon's fight with Tawanchai that, of course, he's a phenomenal striker, but maybe there's some elements to his game that mean that Muay Thai just doesn't suit him as well as kickboxing does. He is definitely more of a kickboxing specialist. With Joe Natwood, he's been able to prove in those fights against Tawanchai that I think his skill set adjusts a lot better. Don't get me wrong. Would I say he's better in Muay Thai than he is in kickboxing? Actually, I don't know. I'd say that's quite a tough call. I would say that Superbon is clearly better in kickboxing. Like, if this fight was in kickboxing, I'd be very confident that Superbon would win. In Muay Thai, I'm a little bit more intrigued, and also because Joe Natwood, I think, has surprised so many people with those fights against Tawanchai. If you look at his record in one, it's not the most impressive, but he's always in a fight. It's never one sided. And it, like I said, a lot of people thought he beat Tao and Chai, and his boxing was huge in that. And if you're going to pick out one thing, if you were going to you know, build an opponent to go out there and fight Superbon, I think boxing would probably be the first thing that put your skill points into, right? Like, look at the fights with Chingiz Alazov, or that fight with Chingiz Alazov. You know what I mean? Of course, Superbon has fought Murat Gregorian like 3 times, and Marat has not had the same level of success in terms of getting close to him and landing his boxing, like Chingiz Alazov, one of the best strikers on the planet. So the fact that he was able to demolish Superbon is, potentially a little bit of a weakness on Superbon's part in terms of his boxing and being pressured, but also, you just got to tip your hat to Chingiz Alazov in that moment. But yeah, I'm super excited for this fight. I've said that, I think, about like every fight on this card, but it's just true. I just look down this whole card and I'm like, that'll be fun, that'll be fun, that'll be fun. Main event, like I said, a little bit confusing. Takeru fight, maybe could have had a better opponent. I think in terms of, if it had been Black Panther, I would have said could have been a better opponent. When Black Panther got injured and they replaced him, I thought at least we'll get someone who's got a couple of fights on Friday fights. And when you look at the depth on this card in terms of the talent level and stuff, I do think they should have done better and got someone from Friday fights to step in and fight Takeru, rather than bringing somebody in. But all of these fights, I think, will be a lot of fun. And I don't think we're going to be complaining about why did this person fight this person and blah, blah, blah. When this card is done and dusted, I think come Monday morning, when I do the next episode of this series, I will be saying, wow, those fights were a lot of fun. And that's that is kind of what I want from these Friday fights cards. Of course, you want some high level fights and all that stuff, but these cards are just so much fun. I don't think this one will be any different. Let me know what you guys think. Is this, does this hit the same kind of heights some of the previous Friday fight pay-per-view cards? Are you going to be tuning in? If it's on pay-per-view where you are you going to be buying the pay-per-view? Because I know they are not cheap, and that's been a big talking point of these cards since they started doing them. And next year we're going to start getting them at the Impact Arena. So you'd imagine that they'll maybe be even bigger than these ones. And, it's a little bit of a strange time right now for One Championship, because we've got this big Friday Fights card. We'll get another big Friday Fights card before the end of the year, if I'm not mistaken. We've got Atlanta, which is looking huge. And so, the cards and stuff like that around them and the news and stuff is a little bit slow, but we'll do what we can to keep these videos coming. Let me know what you guys want to see on this channel. As always, I appreciate the support and all that good stuff. Yeah, let me know which fight you're most excited for on this card. Give me your picks as well. I want to know picks. That's always helpful. And I will see you all very, very soon, I'm sure. But until then, enjoy the fights. See you later.